So what's up again? This is Kunal coming through with a new video on Ayurveda, and I made a longer video, but it was very technical, so I wanted to make it a little simpler and a little more natural. So this is going to be another spontaneous video, and nothing, no script, just some practice trying to do this. I already talked about the three body types of the phlegm, the bile, and what I call gas or black bile. Yellow bile and black bile, according to the Western system. And you can also think of them as mucus, or the quality of mucus, the quality of acidity in the stomach, and the quality of wind or gas, as in the stomach. These are all secretions of your body. And these secretions are basic part, if you look at them philosophically, can be analyzed into five different elements combined into two combinations. For example, the gases, wind, and space. So one thing I learned from Rajiv Dixit, who turned me on to this topic. Rajiv Dixit is who Ramdev publicized. Rajiv Dixit taught me that many of the practices commonly followed by Indian society and the world, modern society, are coming from a Western culture. And he mentioned how a Western culture is a very masculine culture, a very competitive culture, a very dog-eat-dog almost kind of culture, whereas Eastern culture is more grounding, more nourishing, more feminine. So based on that, he suggested certain lifestyle tips that were being promoted but are not really necessarily good for gas humors, which he believes Indian people are the majority of, whereas Westerners, he believes, have more of the phlegm constitution, therefore their lifestyle is geared in that direction. So different body types need different lifestyle tips, and I already talked about seasonal tips, because in different seasons and during the change of seasons you need different lifestyle tips. So I gave you a little clue into that, but one of the most important things he talked about was how in society, especially in society where women are present, which is the West, and not Indian society is still segregated, but in the West it's the same society. So in that kind of society, because there's a woman present, certain natural urges are suppressed. Obviously, this makes sense because women don't want to be raped, because for men, suppression, one of the natural urges is seminal ejaculation. So obviously they would be down with suppressing that natural urge. And also they're very sense driven and very mentally, emotionally driven, not so much intellectually driven. So they cannot ignore sensual struggles as easily as men can. So therefore they suppress the urges such as sneezing and relieving gas, because it's hygienic. But according to Ramdev, and according to you and your body, if you listen to it, it is commonly so he says there's natural urges which are unretainable, and there's some that are retainable, such as greed, malice, violence, and so forth. So to start it, he gives an example that when you don't eat, when you're hungry, you feel tired and lifeless. And also, if you there's very sudden drop in the energy level, right? And also, if you don't drink water when you're thirsty, you feel tired and very dull and lacking life spirit. And thirst can also cause dizziness and lightheadedness and syncope, which is low blood pressure, I believe. And also, then he talks about avoiding urination, which is a big problem in the West. I mean, you can't just piss in the open as easily as in India. So it leads to a lot of suppression. I mean, it starts from school, and it's all over life, because you're basically secluded in a cave of sorts, and the restroom is way somewhere else in the cave. So anyway, what he says is that when you avoid urination or fecal elimination, when you get an urge, you have pain in the bladder, and you also have flatus and other such symptoms. So hunger and thirst and discharging body waste are natural. They're present in every human being, and they occur naturally as a part of living. So um, when you relieve these urges in a timely way, that is one of the keys to good health. It is paramount to good health. And interfering with the natural action of the urges provokes or dysregulates or throws out of balance the humor of gas. And therefore, because gas, derangement of gas humor is a cause of about 70% of all the diseases, because it's such a crucial humor. It controls everything, communication, signaling in the nerves and so forth. So there's 13 of these urges which suppressing is harmful to the human body, and I'm just going to show you this and read it to you. Number 1 is urination. Number 2 is defecation. Now, urination and defecation is considered as one urge in some schools. Seminal ejaculation is the third urge, all right? Passing flatus is the fourth urge. Then vomiting is the fifth urge. Then sneezing is the sixth urge. Then belching is the seventh urge. Yawning is the eighth urge. Hunger is the ninth urge. And thirst is the 10th urge. Then is the urge for weeping or tears. And then 12th is the urge for rapid breathing or hyperventilation. This happens when you exercise, but in some schools, they consider coughing and hyperventilation as one urge. And that's where they consider urination, defecation just as one urge. But Ramdev considers coughing as the same as rapid breathing or hyperventilating. I guess it's very important to keep the number at 13. Rapid breathing or hyper breathing. And 13 is the urge for sleep. All right. So that is also an urge, especially if you've ever lived on the streets. You've seen how these natural urges are really, really suppressed. And it's really cruel because when you're on the streets, you're already in the element of vata or gas because you're not stable at one location. And then they're not even allowing people to use a restroom. Obviously, they can't have sex, but that's a consequence of the artificial habitat we're in, and the disease. But anyhow, then they can't, like, for example, I don't know. I guess they can pass gas whenever they want to. They have that freedom of urge. So I guess it depends on which disease you have, which kind of lifestyle you want to live, basically, right? But there's suppression of urges going on, and that's why I played the song by Bob Marley, because we have certain rights, and right now I see a lot of shaming and suppression of our basic human dignities and rights, and it's reflected in the broken culture in the West, in the decayed society. But anyhow, I already mentioned the urges, and I want to give you some examples of the urges as me as a teacher, ex-teacher, or teacher in transition, feels. We have commonly, as teachers, have to suppress the urge for urination and defecation. I don't think we have decent pay in California, so we don't really have to suppress our urge for seminal ejaculation. But young men, before they become teachers, I guess, definitely have to deal with that suppression. Then another common one when you're in social gatherings are the urge for passing flatus. And then there's more like vomiting, sneezing, and so forth. But I'll just talk about those four because those are really, really suppressed. So what happens when you suppress the urge for urination? The suppression for the urge of urination leads to pain in the bladder, genital organs, lower abdomen, kidney, urethra, and urinary canal. It causes dysuria, trouble with urination, headache, maybe that's why teachers get a lot of headaches and yell at kids, because they don't let us leave. It's crazy because we are basically the watchdogs for these prisoners, and it's terrible. Flatulence, distension in the lower abdomen or the gut. I mean, teachers are pretty teetotaling creatures, so if they have a beer belly, you know why. Drooping of the body and other complications such as body aches. I've seen older teachers, they're basically look like the hunch, you know, they're basically bodies are sagging. It's more noticeable in like fat women, I guess, but it's everywhere. I mean, see the men too, they start drooping and stuff. Anyway, what else? Complications such as body aches, calculi. I mean, where's the lawsuits? Weakening of the urinary bladder, like permanent damage to your urinary bladder. Inflammation and infection in the urinary tract. Now, these are just theories, and for some people, crackpot notions of natural medicine, where they believe because a walnut looks like the brain, so it must be good for the brain. How silly is that? But that's part of the whole, you know, stiff-necked fool syndrome that is promoted by them wizards, dark wizards, dark occultists. So then they talk about the treatments, but I also want to list the symptoms of suppression of the urge for defecation. Actually, you can read the treatments yourself if you have that condition. Let me show you right here. Next page. So basically, like enema therapies, oil drops in the nose, abdominal massages, tub baths, and rubbing your belly in the tub and so forth. Many tips for curing the conditions caused by suppressing urine regularly. Next, we have suppression of the urge to pass stool. Now, avoiding or postponing defecation can cause acute pain, headache, obstruction of flatus and feces, and that's bad because you're obstructing the gas humor right at the source, which is the large intestine. So I definitely think teaching is not for me because I don't want to. Well, I guess when I feel the urge to give back is good again, but they don't pay enough for the torture they put you through. Oh my god. And then they have the nerve. Anyway, administration, you know, managers, stiff-necked fools, you know. Anyway, therapies to reduce inflammation in the urinary tract. Yeah. So yeah, you have obstruction, colds, constipations. I mean, this is very common in Western society because they don't eat right, you know, and they don't listen to their bodies. So then you have cramps in the body, the calf muscles, because calves are connected to your gut or your intestines. Movement, the walkers of the belly, the force that moves in the belly, right? Then distension in the lower abdomen. That's why they combine those two as one urge. And then obstructed heartbeat and toxic vomits. All right, I've already shown you the therapy. Let's move on to the suppression of the urge for seminal ejaculation. So obviously teachers deserve much more than the stipends they get, but at least they get love and respect, and that's spiritual money right there. Next we have suppression of the urge for seminal ejaculation. All right, the third one, and it's really sad with the gender wars today that in all the wars that all these urges are even being suppressed even worse. But seminal ejaculation is something I've and most probably non-psychopathic or non-sociopathic young guys have witnessed. I mean, I remember when I was becoming a little narcissistic myself, I was getting a lot of women, and I am now too, so maybe I am prideful. Anyway, let's see. Suppressing the urge for seminal ejaculation leads to pain in the genital organs and testicles, so-called blue ball syndrome, inflammation, fever, wheezing, pain in the cardiac region, and retention of urine. Now, many of these conditions are treated by cannabis, so that's why a lot of the homeless ascetics in India are fond cannabis enthusiasts. Not enthusiasts, actually, but consumers and partakers. Regular partakers, but not obsessed like in the West, the kids in the West. It can also lead to body aches, frequent stretching and yawning, hydrocele calculi, and impotency. Alright, the suppression of sperm might be done by mental and emotional factors, not just physical ones like certain conspiracy theorists like to promote. So treatment for such complications include, this is very important, so make sure you read up. Massaging, that's why I love massage, oil massage. Tub bathing, a very relaxed kind of bathing. Oil-free enema, so enemas, just like the other two, or just like the defecation. Eating unpolished rice and milk. Now I remember reading this article way back when there was more freedom on the internet, and it was talking about how this was a therapy for a young man, very similar to the brahmacharya system of pupilship in Indian religious tradition. The young man should live away, 10 miles away from society, subsist on a diet of solely milk and rice, or mainly on milk and rice, avoid stimulants, even spicy things, and spend the time doing prayer and reflection and meditation and study. And this was the prescription for living up to 100 years with no health problems. And it's really true, because out there in the world there's a Mr. Taxman, and they're out here too in the wild wilderness, and they find their means to extract their tax from you. Yeah, so anyhow, so let's get to the next topic, which is that treatment for living 100 years was something that kind of makes sense, and it does nourish you, and it does kind of bring some peace of mind and sanity to the troubled men. Let's get to the other treatments. So milk boiled with diuretic medicines, again bhang, such as gokaru, is also effective to prevent unnecessary seminal discharge, and also for people who don't have a girlfriend, for example, they should avoid unnecessary seminal discharge. So avoid stimulating your senses with diet, with literature and media, and also watch where you go, because certain places you'll find everywhere you go. I mean, even grocery stores today you can't go without seeing a serious amount of skin. But yeah, they talk about the media, and then they talk about tamasic food, or spicy and heavy foods. I guess meat should be avoided. That's why they drink milk, because meat tends to stimulate it more than milk does. And anyway, maybe it is a practice to live greater than 100 years, because even though you're not eating meat, which is healthier for you than milk, you still get to avoid Mr. Taxman to a large degree, because you just remove yourself from that circumstance, or try to, and avoid it. Therefore, anyway, I'm just tripping, because it's pretty rough living on the road, actually. They managed to get everywhere, because the whole globe, right? You see the bars around the whole globe in the United Nations flag. Anyway, I think I did my talk. There's more urges than I could in my next talk. I plan to talk more about it, but it's already 20 minutes, and my future talks should be 15 to 20 minutes, especially the ones that are thought about, more thought. Well, I just want to try to do this, because I realize that people have a limited attention span. So let's end with Bob Marley's great, one of his great songs. Yeah, they always kill our prophets. And it's not always physical. But yeah, fire and water. These are two of the elements, the two main elements. And all the other elements can be combined into them. Similarly thought of them. But there's always a third one, which is not seen, which is the wind. And that pretty much makes all of existence. And that's the principle of the three, because everything is encompassed by the three. Every issue out there has two sides to it. And then there's the alternative side, which tends to have more of the truth, because it comes from original thought. Sometimes comes from original thought, or is based on plagiarized original thought more so. But yeah, that's me checking out. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something to help transform your life. Peace.